The clang of a dropped saucepan silenced the kitchen. Every chef, porter, and waiter froze mid-motion, as if the air itself had been sucked out of the room. Who the hell let a child in my kitchen? Chef Lucien's voice sliced through the steam and sizzled like a cleaver. In the corner, Malik's small hands tightened around the strap of his father's old leather serving tray. He had only meant to pass through, just to see where the magic happened. But now, under the glare of a man whose name was plastered on cookbooks across the country, Malik felt the weight of every stare. "Sorry, chef," his father, Jerome, said quickly, stepping forward with an apologetic bow. "My son was just—" Lucien raised a hand, silencing him with theatrical disdain. "Your son." He let the word roll off his tongue, dripping with mockery. "I didn't realize the wait staff was bringing in their families now. What's next? You'll let him plate the foie gras." A ripple of forced laughter ran through the sous chef's nervous, not joyful. Everyone knew Lucien's temper. He was a culinary god in New York, but gods often threw lightning bolts for sport. Malik didn't say a word. He couldn't not with the way Lucien's icy blue eyes bore into him. But deep inside, something flared. A stubborn heat, as sharp and unforgiving as the chili peppers Malik had once snuck into his mother's stew just to see what would happen. Lucien took a step closer, towering over him. "Tell me, kiddo, you even know what a mirepoix is? Or is your culinary education limited to whatever fast food your neighborhood can afford?" A few people winced. Malik's father shifted, as though physically shielding him from the insult. But Malik, despite the sting, didn't flinch. He didn't answer, either. Instead, his eyes wandered to the counter behind Lucien where a half-finished dish sat, its balance all wrong. Too much salt, not enough acid. He could smell it. Lucien noticed the boy's gaze and sneered. "What? Think you can do better than me?" The boy said nothing. But he thought, yes. Absolutely yes. The kitchen roared back to life as Lucien waved him away like an unwanted fly. Jerome ushered Malik toward the swinging door, his voice low and urgent. "You can't talk back to him, son. That man's got the power to fire me just for breathing wrong." "I wasn't going to talk back," Malik replied quietly. "I was going to fix his sauce." Jerome stopped dead in his tracks. "What?" Malik shrugged, as if it were obvious. "It's too salty." And he forgot to cut it with acid. His father blinked at him, torn between pride and the urge to keep his job. "Malik, you're not touching anything in there." "Understand. But fate has a way of ignoring orders." It happened less than an hour later. A VIP table had sent back a dish, Lucien's dish, complaining that it was flat. The kitchen buzzed with panic. Lucien's jaw tightened as he barked orders, trying to salvage his masterpiece. But Malik, hovering by the door while waiting for his father, saw his moment. The sauce pot was right there, unattended for a heartbeat. The line cooks were scrambling, no one watching the small boy in the doorway. In 2 quick steps, Malik was beside it. He reached for a lemon wedge from the garnish station, squeezed it into the sauce, and stirred twice. Then he grabbed a sprig of thyme, fresh, fragrant, and dropped it in. The scent bloomed instantly, transforming the heavy, salty base into something bright, layered, alive. By the time a sous chef turned and noticed him, Malik had already stepped back, his hands at his sides like nothing had happened. The plate went out, and 3 minutes later, a server returned with a message from the VIP table. "Best sauce they've ever tasted." Lucien didn't smile. He didn't thank anyone. He just looked around the room, eyes narrow. Who touched it? Silence. Knives kept chopping. Oil kept hissing in pans. But the quiet was loud enough to hear Malik's heart pounding. Finally, Jerome spoke, his voice almost breaking. "Chef, it was my son." The room froze again. Malik stood still, every instinct screaming at him to run. Lucien stepped forward, slow and deliberate, until he was face to face with the boy again. "You," Lucien said, his voice low and dangerous. "Touched my sauce." Malik swallowed. "Yes, chef." There was a pause long enough for Malik to imagine every possible way his father's job could vanish in the next 30 seconds. Then Lucien smirked. Not the cruel smirk from earlier, but something darker, harder to read. "Fine," he said at last. "You think you can cook? Prove it." That was how Malik found himself standing at a prep station taller than his chest, a chef's knife in his small hands, the entire kitchen watching like it was the season finale of a reality show. Lucien crossed his arms. "Make something. Anything." But if it's trash, you're both out of here. Jerome looked like he wanted to grab his son and drag him out the back door. But Malik only nodded. Yes, chef. He moved without hesitation, scanning the ingredients around him. Fresh basil, garlic, ripe tomatoes, pasta dough resting under a cloth. Simple. But simplicity, he knew, was where truth lived. He started chopping fast, precise. The garlic sang in the hot oil. The tomatoes broke down into a fragrant sauce. He rolled the pasta dough with surprising skill, cutting thin ribbons that danced when they hit the boiling water. Every motion was instinct, muscle memory from years of cooking at home with his late grandmother, who had taught him that food was love, and love was detail. Even Lucien found himself leaning forward as the boy plated the dish. Fresh tagliatelle with tomato basil sauce, garnished with a chiffonade of basil and a drizzle of olive oil, so green, it looked like liquid spring. Malik pushed the plate toward him. Taste it. Lucien picked up a fork, twirling the pasta slowly. He took one bite and for a split second, something in his expression softened. But then the mask slid back into place. Not bad, he said. For a kid. But Malik caught the way the corners of his mouth almost turned upward, the way his eyes flickered with something dangerously close to respect. Lucien set the fork down, slowly, like a judge returning a verdict. The clatter against the porcelain rang louder than it should have. Every chef in the room was trying to look busy, but they were all stealing glances at the boy and the man who could make or break their careers. You've got hands, Lucien said finally. Fast ones. Clean cuts. Not a single crushed basil leaf. He stepped closer. Where'd you learn that? My grandmother, Malik said simply. Lucien's brows drew together. Your grandmother? Jerome shifted uneasily beside him, as though this conversation was a minefield. Chef, with all due respect, I wasn't talking to you, Lucien snapped. Then, softer, to Malik, your grandmother was a chef? No, Malik replied. She cooked for her family, and her neighbors, and anyone who was hungry. Lucien's lips pressed into a thin line. That's not the same thing. Malik didn't flinch. Tastes the same to me. A few people tried to hide their smirks behind chopping boards. Lucien's gaze sharpened, but instead of exploding, he turned on his heel. Follow me. They moved to the far end of the kitchen, where the VIP menu for the night service was scrawled on a whiteboard. Malik's father tried to follow, but Lucien stopped him with a raised hand. Just the boy. Jerome hesitated, torn between protecting his son and obeying the one man who could end his job. Malik gave his father a tiny nod, one that said I'm okay. Lucien pointed to the menu. Tonight's special, seared duck breast with spiced plum reduction, parsnip puree, and charred broccolini. Ever made duck? Malik shook his head. Lucien smirked. Good. It's a pain in the ass. Ruin it by even 5 seconds, and it's rubber. But, if you can make it right, maybe you deserve to be in my kitchen for more than a tourist visit. The challenge wasn't just about cooking. Malik could feel if this was about proving he could survive under pressure, in front of the man who had mocked him minutes ago. Lucien grabbed a duck breast from the prep fridge, slapping it on the board. Score the skin. Even cuts. Don't tear the flesh. Let's see what you've got. Malik's small fingers held the knife steady, dragging shallow diagonal lines across the skin in a perfect crosshatch. Lucien leaned in, watching for the inevitable slip, but it didn't come. Not bad, Lucien murmured. Season it. Malik sprinkled salt and cracked pepper with a precision that looked almost rehearsed. Then he placed the meat, skin side down, into a cold pan, a detail that made Lucien raise a brow. Cold pan? The chef asked. Keeps the skin from shrinking too fast, Malik replied without looking up. Gives the fat more time to render. Lucien didn't respond, but his silence was louder than words. The skin began to sizzle, golden fat pooling in the pan. Malik tilted it gently, spooning the hot fat over the meat in slow, steady motions. Around them, the kitchen noise dulled. Even the servers paused at the pass-through, sensing something unusual happening. When the duck was done resting, Malik sliced it at a perfect medium rare rossi in the center, juices glistening. He plated it with the parsnip puree and charred broccolini exactly as he'd seen the sous chefs do earlier, but added his own touch, a sprinkle of orange zest over the plum reduction. Lucien stared at the plate for a long moment before cutting into the duck. He chewed once, twice, and then set the fork down with a quiet clink. Who taught you to cook like that? I told you, Malik said. My grandmother. Lucien's gaze flicked to Jerome, then back to Malik. Something in his eyes shifted respect, maybe, but buried under layers of ego. You've got instinct. That's rare. But instinct without discipline is just luck. Malik's jaw tightened. Then teach me discipline. The boldness in his voice made Jerome step forward. Malik, Lucien held up a hand. No, let him speak. He looked at the boy for a long, tense moment, then finally said, Fine. One service. Tonight. If you can keep up, you can come back tomorrow. The hours leading up to dinner service were a blur. Malik was given a spare apron and stationed at the garnish station, where he was told very firmly not to touch the proteins. But every so often, Lucien would bark and order his way. Boy, hand me that microplane. Boy, check the heat on station 3. Boy, taste this and tell me what's wrong. Each time, Malik moved without hesitation, answering with short, precise words. The staff began to notice. By the time the first wave of orders came in, he was working almost seamlessly with the others. The restaurant's energy shifted once the tickets started printing in rapid-fire bursts. Shouts of "Order in" and "Fire table 6" filled the air. Malik kept his head down, slicing herbs, wiping plates, drizzling sauces with a steady hand. Lucien watched him out of the corner of his eye. Not once did the boy complain, hesitate, or ask to rest. Halfway through service, disaster struck. A line cook dropped an entire tray of seared scallops, 40 portions gone in seconds. Lucien's face went red as he barked, We're dead without those. Someone start another batch now. But the scallops wouldn't be ready in time for the next ticket. Malik, without asking, grabbed a pan and tossed in a handful of shrimp from the backup fridge. He worked fast, searing them in butter with garlic and paprika, then plating them with the same garnish meant for the scallops. Lucien spun around mid-plate to see what was happening. What the hell are you? The server swept up the dish before Lucien could stop it. 10 minutes later, word came back. The customer loved this special shrimp substitution and wanted to know if it was on the menu. The staff exchanged glances. Lucien didn't say a word, just looked at Malik for a long, unreadable second before turning back to the line. By the end of the night, Malik's legs ached, his fingers smelled like citrus and garlic, and sweat clung to the back of his neck. But when the last plate went out, a strange electricity hummed through him. Lucien walked over, arms crossed. Not bad, kid. You didn't sink the ship. That's it. Malik asked. Not bad. Lucien's mouth twitched. Don't get cocky. You've got a long way to go. He turned to Jerome. Bring him back tomorrow. 6 a.m. sharp. Jerome hesitated. Chef, I don't know if Lucien cut him off. I'm not asking. If you don't bring him, I'll find him myself. Outside, the cool night air wrapped around them. Jerome walked in silence for a while before saying, You know you just made an enemy and a teacher at the same time, right? Malik grinned, exhausted but glowing. Good. That means I'm in the right kitchen. That night, Malik barely slept. His mind replayed every moment, the way the duck's skin crisped under his knife, the rush of timing a plate perfectly, the quiet nod Lucien gave him when he thought no one was looking. By morning, he was back in the kitchen, apron on, ready before anyone else. Lucien greeted him with a grunt and threw a recipe binder on the counter. Read it, then forget half of it. Then learn it again. And just like that, Malik's real training began. By noon, Malik understood why chefs called the prep hours the quiet before the storm. Quiet, here, was relative. Pans still clanged, knives still sliced through onions with machine gun precision, and the low thump of the dishwasher's cycle never stopped. But compared to the chaos of service, it was almost peaceful. Almost. Lucien was never peaceful. Again, he barked, slapping Malik's hand lightly with the back of a spoon. Your julienne is sloppy. You cut to look fast. That's amateur. Speed comes from accuracy, not panic. Malik gritted his teeth, lining up the carrot sticks like soldiers. His wrists ached from repetition, but he wasn't about to give Lucien the satisfaction of seeing him slow down. Jerome passed by with a tray of sparkling wine glasses, shooting his son a subtle look, half warning, half pride. Malik caught it, and it fueled him more than any compliment from Lucien could have. At 1 p.m., the kitchen meeting began. Everyone circled up while Lucien rattled off specials, supplier issues, and the name of a famous food critic who had booked a table for Friday night. This is not the time for experiments, Lucien said, letting his gaze sweep over the room. It lingered on Malik for a fraction of a second longer than anyone else. That's when the first crack in the kitchen's surface tension appeared. "Chef," said a sous chef named Brianna Tall, sandy-haired man with a voice just loud enough to carry. "Are we really letting the waiter's kid work the line again? No offense, but we're not a daycare." A few people chuckled, some nervously, others without shame. Malik felt the heat rise in his cheeks, but he kept his eyes on Lucien. Lucien didn't flinch. "Brian, do you have a problem with who I put in my kitchen?" Brian gave a little shrug. "I just think if we're giving out training spots, maybe it should go to someone who's white." Malik's voice cut through before he even realized he'd spoken. The room went still. Brian's smirk faltered. "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to," Malik said quietly, but everyone heard. Lucien's jaw tightened. "Enough. Get to work. All of you." The circle broke, but the air stayed heavy. Malik returned to his station, eyes locked on the cutting board, pretending not to notice the sideways glances. By evening, the critics' visit had turned into the only topic anyone wanted to talk about. Malik didn't say much, but he was listening in, more importantly, watching. He noticed how Brian accidentally left the salt out of Malik's mise en place, how another line cook replaced his fresh herbs with ones that had already wilted. Small sabotage, easy to deny, but enough to make mistakes look like his. Lucien noticed too. "Come here," the chef ordered after catching Brian swap Malik's lemon wedges for dried-out rinds. Malik followed him to the walk-in fridge. "You think this kitchen owes you kindness?" Lucien asked, his voice low, bouncing off the walls of cold steel. "No, chef," Malik said. "You think they'll respect you if you keep quiet?" Malik hesitated. "No, chef." Lucien leaned in. "Then stop waiting for approval. They'll either respect your work or choke on it." He straightened. "Friday night. You're running the garnish station for the critics' table. Don't screw it up." Malik's pulse hammered in his ears. "Yes, chef." The next 2 days were a blur of repetition. Malik cut, stirred, plated, and cleaned until his hands blistered. Lucien was relentless, correcting his posture, forcing him to redo entire trays of prep if even one element wasn't perfect. On Thursday night, Jerome pulled him aside. "Son, you sure about this? That man's working you like a mule." "I'm sure," Malik said, though his shoulders ached so badly he could barely lift his arms. "I'm not here to get treated nice. I'm here to get good." Jerome's mouth curved into a reluctant smile. "That you are." Friday came. The kitchen was electric, staff moving faster, voices sharper, every station primed for the possibility that a single bad plate could end up in a scathing review read by thousands. The critics' table was set near the back, close enough to hear the hum of the kitchen, but far enough to preserve the illusion of calm. Malik could see the man from his Stationa middle-aged figure in a dark blazer, eyes scanning the room with the kind of cool calculation that could make or break reputations. Lucien worked like a conductor at an orchestra, every gesture sending ripples of motion through the staff. When the critic's ticket came in, it felt like the room collectively held its breath. "Fire table 12. Lucien called. "Duck, scallops, and 2 tasting menus. Garnish station, you ready?" "Yes, chef." Malik's voice rang clear. Everything was moving smoothly until the garnish for the duck went missing. Malik turned to grab the charred broccolini, only to find an empty tray. His stomach dropped. He had prepped it himself 30 minutes ago. Brian's smirk from the other end of the line told him exactly what had happened. Lucien's voice snapped like a whip. "Garnish station, where's my broccolini?" Malik didn't think. He grabbed fresh stalks, threw them into a scorching pan with olive oil, salt, and pepper, charring them in seconds. But he didn't stop there. He deglazed the pan with a splash of lemon juice, letting the acidity cut through the smoke. The broccolini hit the plate seconds before the server swept it away. Minutes later, the first feedback came from the floor. The critic had taken notes, but no visible reaction. The tension was unbearable. When the second course went out, Malik spotted a last-minute flaw in one of the scallop platisse, a drizzle of sauce too heavy, drowning the delicate sear. Without hesitation, he grabbed a clean spoon, adjusted it, and sent it out. Lucien saw. He didn't say a word, but his eyes flicked with something like trust. Finally, the dessert course left the kitchen. The staff gathered near the pass, pretending to prep while they waited for the verdict. The critic rose from his seat, adjusted his jacket, and walked straight into the kitchen. Conversations froze mid-sentence. "I don't usually do this," the critic said, his voice carrying in the silence. But tonight, I had one of the finest meals I've tasted in months. Balanced, confident, unpretentious. He looked directly at Lucien. Especially the garnishes elevated the dishes without overpowering them. Who's responsible? Lucien didn't hesitate. He jerked his head toward Malik. Him. The critic's eyebrows lifted. How old are you? 12, Malik said. The man chuckled in disbelief. Well, young man, you've got a palate I'd pay money to taste again. Keep cooking. He left without another word. The kitchen erupted in noisome clapping, some muttering. Brian looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Lucien stepped up beside Malik. Not bad, he said, almost smiling. But if you think that's the peak, you're already falling. Malik grinned. Then I guess I better keep climbing. The next morning, the air in the kitchen felt different. Malik could sense it even before he tied his apron. Some staff members offered him nods, small, grudging signs of respect. Others avoided his eyes entirely. Lucien was already at the counter, flipping through a stack of papers. You've got an interview, he said without looking up. Malik blinked. An interview? A TV producer. They were at the critics' table last night. They want to feature the kid chef on a cooking segment next week. Lucien's voice was flat, unreadable. Jerome, polishing glasses nearby, froze. That's huge, Malik. Malik's excitement flickered, but so did a question. And you're okay with it, chef? Lucien's eyes finally met his. I didn't say I was okay with it. I said it's happening. Word spread fast. By lunch, half the kitchen was buzzing with talk about the Prodigy. Malik tried to focus on prep, but he could feel the shift, how his presence now carried weight, how some people measured themselves against him without saying it out loud. Brian, of course, didn't keep quiet. Guess some people skip the line if they're a good story, he muttered within earshot. Malik ignored it. Lucien didn't. You want to test that theory, Brian? Lucien said, his voice ice cold. Because I can put you head-to-head with him tonight. Brian smirked. You mean a cook-off? Fine. Let's see if the golden boy can take the heat. That night, after the last dinner rush, the kitchen became an arena. The staff stayed, curious to watch. 2 stations were cleared. The rules were simple. 1 hour, mystery basket ingredients revealed at the start. Best dish wins. Lucien dumped the contents onto the counter. Duck, figs, fennel, fresh ginger, and a block of dark chocolate. The timer started. Brian worked like a storm fast, aggressive, his knife clattering against the board. Malik moved differently. Precise, deliberate, his eyes scanning every step ahead. He decided on a seared duck breast with fig ginger reduction, fennel slaw, and a chocolate-infused mole-style sauce for depth. The combination was risky. Too much chocolate, and it would overpower everything. Too little, and it wouldn't register. Brian went for a fig-glazed duck over roasted fennel, safe but flashy. As the clock ticked down, the room filled with the perfume of caramelized sugar and sizzling fat. Malik tasted and adjusted constantly, hearing his grandmother's voice in his head. Season with your heart, not your ego. When the time was up, Lucien tasted Brian's first. Technically sound, balanced, but safe, he said, setting the plate down. Then he moved to Malik's. He cut into the duck, the knife gliding through a perfect medium rare. He took one bite, then another. Lucien set the fork down slowly, his face unreadable. This, he said finally, is dangerous. Bold. And it works. A ripple went through the kitchen. Brian's jaw tightened. Malik exhaled for the first time in what felt like an hour. The next week, Malik appeared on the TV segment. He cooked live, answered questions with calm confidence, and even cracked a joke that made the host laugh. The video went viral within days. Suddenly, his name wasn't just whispered in Lucien's kitchen, it was being spoken in culinary circles across the city. But with fame came choice. One afternoon, a man in a tailored suit approached Jerome in the dining room. He represented a youth culinary program that trained prodigies for high-level competitions, even scholarships to elite cooking schools. They wanted Malik. When Malik told Lucien, the chef didn't react right away. He just kept chopping herbs. So you're leaving, he said at last. I'm not leaving, Malik said. I'm growing. Isn't that the point? Lucien's knife stopped mid-chop. He looked at the boy, and for the first time, there was no smirk, no condescension, just the sharp weight of truth. If you go, don't come back half-formed. Come back ready to take my place. On Malik's last night before joining the program, Lucien called for silence in the kitchen. The staff turned, surprised this wasn't his style. This kid walked in here because his father couldn't keep him out, Lucien said. I mocked him. I expected him to fold. Instead, he outcooked half of you in less time than it takes to boil an egg. He earned his station. He earned my respect. And he's about to earn a hell of a lot more. The kitchen clapped, not the polite kind, but the genuine, shoulder-smacking kind. Even Brian managed a tight nod. Jerome, standing near the pass, caught his son's eye and mouthed, proud of you. As Malik hung up his apron that night, Lucien approached. One last thing, he said, pulling a small, worn recipe card from his pocket. This was my grandmother's. Her duck confit. I've never given it to anyone. Malik took it, stunned. Why me? Lucien's mouth curved in the faintest smile. Because you remind me of Mimimus the Arrogance. Keep it that way. Years later, Malik would return not as a boy in an oversized apron, but as a chef with his own restaurant. And on opening night, in the crowd, would be Jerome, smiling wider than the lights above the sign. And in the corner, watching quietly with a glass of wine, would be Lucien. This time, when their eyes met, Malik didn't see a rival or a mentor. He saw the man who had once mocked him in a kitchen and unknowingly lit the fire that would never go out. The last plate of the night went out, simple but perfect, seared duck breast, fennel slaw, fig ginger sauce, and just a whisper of dark chocolate. The dish that had once won him a cook-off. Only now, it wasn't about winning. It was about telling his story one bite at a time. And every guest tasted it. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.